We on? We're air? Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Halloween edition of Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association presents Reasonable Doubt. I am your host, local counsel. I think that's funny. Here, along with our other host, Justin Harris. How are you doing?
I'm good. Sorry. I was getting messages from other people.
Yeah. And a very, very, very special guest, Chris Downey, the local legend. How are you doing? And Vordire extraordinaire.
Hey, well, if I'd known, I would have worn my giant Care Bear costume.
Well, look, right now you look like a legend, so I think that still counts. I don't. I've known you forever, man. I mean, and all right, let me take this off. I've known you forever, and it's an honor and privilege to have you on the show and to talk to you and to come, and so I appreciate it. And just appreciate it, and we all do.
Thank you very much for coming, Chris.
Always.
It's my pleasure.
And as always, running the booth, Mark Pirtle with the Houston Media Source. How you doing?
Super.
Wonderful. And for everybody viewing out there, I apologize. We've taken about 2 weeks off. We've had a lot that's been going on. People have been in trial and, catching up from COVID and getting adjusted to some of these new things that are going on. And I do know that that a lot of other things have been happening. And so my head's kind of been in the sand. And so I'd like to, if anybody wants to talk about some things or converse with us, go ahead and chime in on the chat and or zoom in. I know we had the whole board get the Zoom link. And so if you're listening and you want to come on in, come on in. So
JV, you've been in trial for how long?
So October I think it's 4 weeks. I've been in trial 2 of the 4. So I had a felony trial for an aggravated sexual assault of a child that lasted about 6 days, and then I just finished today another 5-day trial with aggravated kidnapping and aggravated assault with all kinds of nasty extraneouses. However, I wasn't the first person to try a case in the COVID times. Chris Downey was part of the team that, quite frankly, humiliated the district attorney's office in the Arkema trial. And so, Chris, the Vordire master, how did you like that Vordire? Because you all sat the jury months ago, right? And then it was a pause, and then you guys came back. Is that true? Is that how did that happen?
Yeah, we picked a jury in Arkema back in February. We were in trial for about a month, from the second week of February to about the second week of March, and then all hell broke loose, and the case was put on pause. The first pause was probably about 30 days. And then, as you guys know, everything just kept rolling. It was 30 days, another 30 days. Next thing we know, we didn't tee it off again until September. So the case went on hiatus for almost 6 months.
So this was sorry, JV.
No, wait, and forgive me, because I've never been in a situation where a trial broke and then was paused for 6 months. It was the same jury. Did you have any alternates, and did any of the alternates end up serving?
Look, I can honestly say that in 27 years, I've never been in my life in anything that even approximates what the Arkema case was like. It was a bizarre experience. That said, yeah, we started with the same jury. We finished with the same jury. This company wanted this trial to go forward. This company was given countless opportunities to get a mistrial. And in so many criminal cases, we advise our clients to do so. But in this case, we were fighting like hell to keep that trial going as defendants. And there was nothing about this trial that related to anything I'd ever tried.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So the main break was like the bulk of hurricane season. And this was a case that stemmed from, allegations of environmental crimes during Hurricane Harvey. were y'all worried about like another storm coming in, and you had a jury that y'all voir dired about those issues and the impact the storm had on them and any fallout from the storm? Were y'all That's what I always worry about when there's a large break in like any kind of case, that all of a sudden my jury changes because something changes in one of the jurors' lives.
Well, this was a case that obviously we were fortunate enough to have a defendant that had the capacity to really drill down into the details. We had a wonderful jury consultant, and we picked a jury incredibly well, I think. And it was we were very confident in the details of the jurors that we had. We chose a cross section of jurors that we really thought would understand what the defensive theories were, and we were confident throughout the break that, or I should say, we were confident at the time of the break that the jurors were very uh, favorable to the defensive theories. So we just kept pushing throughout the break, hoping that they would stay together. But we didn't know if they were going to get COVID, if they were going to say, "Look, I've been out of work for 6 months. I got to go back to my job." If they were just going to, I think if any of them had said, "No, I don't want to come back," Judge Hill probably would have given them a hall pass and declared a mistrial. It was a bizarre experience, but to the jurors' credit, and we spoke with them at length at the end of the trial, they were bound and determined to see this case through. The
Good.
issues that came up in the trial, it kept them together. They had developed a bit of a bond over the 4 or 5 weeks that we'd been in trial, and they were bound and determined to come back and see it through.
Let me ask you something about, if I may, about jury consultants. Um, I wonder, does the jury because I wonder, as a defense attorney, we have our themes and we have our ideas of how we want to take a case. I've always wondered, does the jury consultant then come in and say, "Hey, you're really not looking for these kind of people," or, and I'm afraid that the jury consultant will take away the some of the ideas from of the team. How does the jury consultant and the defense attorney work together for a plan?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it is definitely part art and part science. I would say that you have to be open minded when you work with a jury consultant, and the jury consultant has to be equally open minded to what the defense lawyer thinks. In the Arkema case, we took a look at what the uh, we took samplings of some jurors out there, or potential jurors out there. We tried to identify what the good juror looked like, and then we built off of that. Truly an art. I can tell you, look, I made a lot of suggestions to the defense team about what I would have suggested in the way of jury questions. I think they were almost uniformly disregarded, and I don't blame them because they picked a fantastic jury. Rusty Harden did an incredible job. Paul Nugent did a great job. Dan, Tim, they all did fantastic jobs in kind of distilling out the people they wanted. Um, this was a case where we were really looking for, I'd say, I don't like the word blue collar workers, but we wanted people with real hard work experience who were going to appreciate what this company did to try to do the right thing. We wanted people who were embedded in the workforce. We wanted people who, were just had a hell of a lot of doses of common sense, and we got them.
Did you all do did you all do a like a mock jury, or did you do any focus groups or anything like that?
Yeah, we did. We did a couple of focus groups. I was only in the case for one of the later focus groups, but of course, I'd heard about the other one. So we did do some focus group studies to try to figure out how people responded more to potential prosecutorial themes than defensive themes.
Say that last part again.
Yeah, we focused a little bit on how they responded to certain prosecutorial themes as opposed to really defensive themes. We were interested in how the prosecution was going to try to wrap this case around our necks.
What were the prosecutorial themes? If you don't mind me, what did you all identify?
Honestly, with the benefit of hindsight, I think we probably guessed wrong. I think we were expecting that the prosecutors were going to be handling this case like a prosecutor would, and instead, what we had was a bunch of civil lawyers trying to play civil court. They were trying to argue theories of criminal negligence in a case that involved acts of criminal recklessness, trying to ignore the rules of evidence left and right and really just throw a hell of a lot of mud in the air and hope that some of it stuck. I described it to one of the lawyers at the later parts of the case. I said, damn it, this trial is like being in a boxing ring with a crazy homeless guy. And the bell rings and he comes out and bites your leg. And you're standing there wondering, can I punch him? And truly, we were constantly wondering what the hell was going on. Um, it was bizarre.
And so did you seat a jury at NRG?
Well, no, we picked the jury in Harris County
Fair enough.
traditionally
Okay,
up in the ceremonial courts.
I remember that.
Yeah, the case was going for about a month, and then it broke, and then we restarted in the rooms up above the area where juries are now selected at NRG.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
they set up a temporary courtroom in the upper, I guess you call them like corporate ballrooms. It was really just a big um, tiled room with no amenities, and we had the jurors spaced out, and then we had enough room for uh, two counsel tables for the state and about six counsel tables for the defense and some of the support staff. Just to give you an idea of how much the company wanted to see this case through, they funded a significant, or I shouldn't say funded, they involuntarily underwrote a lot of the money and effort that was spent trying to get this case to happen. The company picked up the tab for a lot of the IT equipment that was used in its own trial. The company picked up the tab for processing and bait stamping all the evidence that was used against it, because the state couldn't get out of their own way to figure out how to do it.
Why?
What's that like? Oh, sorry.
Why in the first place did they? What were there attorneys that were not with the district attorney's office trying the case?
Well, I can't really, I'd have to guess. This case started in the Environmental Crimes Division of the District Attorney's Office. It was headed up by Alex Forrest. Alex Forrest spearheaded the investigation. After the case was indicted, a few months after it was indicted, the district attorney announced that two civil lawyers were going to take over the prosecution and spearhead the prosecution. And not shortly after that, they added a second version of criminal liability that no one had ever seen before, and that became the two-count indictment that the company went to trial on.
So what was that like? Like you see these people in March, and then there's no they didn't come back in between, right? It was just then September, everyone comes in the room, and there's this like 900-pound gorilla named or coronavirus, and the judge is just like, call your next witness.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, and everybody just rolled with it. People are
Wow.
remarkably adjustable. Jurors went from being on the witness stand to being on the witness stand in face shields and masks, and having to hand off exhibits in creative ways so that nobody had any contact.
Wow.
Let me introduce some of the individuals that came in. I think we have Kate Farrell. She's in costume, so I will. Hey, Kate, how are you?
I'm good. I'm not in costume though.
Oh, that's just what you wore to court.
She's in theme.
Just my pajamas. I don't know what you're talking about. Just what I always wear.
And I think Neil's on the line. Neil, are you there?
What do you like about me, Gypsy? I do not know this.
Okay, well, that sounds like Neil or Borat. I don't know, one or the other.
You not know which one it may be.
It's a good movie. I mean, it's a good movie. Okay, back to Chris. So, Kate, jump in whenever you need. Kate's a fellow board member of the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association and trial attorney extraordinaire. And it's wonderful that we have and so is Neil, a good group of trial attorneys because we can get some good insight as to trials and then what we, some of the things that we've heard or seen in trial with NRG. I'd like to talk to you about Chris about the face masks and the masks and how you dealt with that and did you find it to be a problem or did any of the jurors think it was a problem during your trial?
It was kind of weird. I think what we found was that wearing masks is a real problem. It's a real problem not only for the long-term comfort of the people who are participating in the trial, but it's also a real impediment to being heard. Even when you're using mics, and we had people mic'd up with walk-around mics, they constantly had to get rid of the mask to speak. So we kind of developed a protocol where if you were doing the questioning or if you were a witness on the stand, you were wearing a face shield. And then what we had were portable mics that went up under the face shield and allowed you to be heard. And that seemed to work. I didn't see so much of the like the confrontation issue developing because the witnesses were all wearing face shields. The jurors, we kind of got a sense of what they're from their body language, how they felt.
What do you think that did any of the jurors, did you talk to the jurors afterwards?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me what they say. What was what they say, not only regarding the case, but then on a secondary question about the COVID proceedings?
I guess, look, these folks deserve medals. I'm not saying that. These folks came back after a 6-month break to go back into a trial and listen to a bunch of lawyers get in fights. It was pretty impressive. And then, the trial got yanked away from them and directed out. And you would think there might be some bitterness there, right? I mean, they came back to see this thing through. But they were a pretty fascinating bunch. They were not they didn't take the COVID issues lightly. They took them very seriously. But they also had a really strong sense of public service, and they didn't want to be the reason that this case got delayed or had to be tried again. Rusty did the right thing. He asked them point blank if what their verdict would be, and asked him if he could share it. And they all approved of him sharing it. So I feel comfortable talking about it. But they said that we got directed out at about 10 o'clock in the morning. And we went back a few minutes later and talked to the jury, and they told us they would have a verdict by lunch.
Wow.
Yeah, they said they were gonna vote to acquit by lunchtime. They were that disappointed in the quantum of proof, and that's after being in trial for months.
I have to wonder, okay, it's one thing to break for the weekend and come back on Monday and say, yeah, I haven't heard any news stories about some case that's happening on the 15th or 18th floor or something. It's another thing to be gone for 6 months and to be out in the world where your case, the Arkema trial, is the biggest case in the state. I mean, it's the biggest thing. It was covered by all the news stations. It was covered by the Chronicle. It was covered with everyone.
We covered it on Reasonable Doubt.
We covered it. Well, right? We covered it, and it's. I wonder if any of them heard anything or saw anything. Was that even a question or even brought up?
No, they were all screened before we started or restarted about whether or not they'd received any information on the case. They all stated they hadn't. We opened with reopenings. We petitioned the judge to actually reopen the case, and the judge allowed both the state and the defense to summarize the evidence to that point, but only to summarize statements of the record, a true opening statement, no argument. And, you know, of course, that had never happened before, but it seemed sensible and it seemed permissible, and the parties didn't object, so we did it.
I have a question. Do you think the pandemic actually helped you guys? You know, another kind of act of God. Nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's trying their best to deal with it. Kind of a similar situation with what Arkema faced. Here's an act of God. You're trying to deal with the situation.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
The impact of the jurors.
you know, act of God was going to be one of the components in the charge. It certainly, I think, would have played out well given if we had gotten to that stage. I think you could have easily argued, just look around you, you know. But honestly, the biggest aid that the defense had was candidly the incompetence of the prosecution.
Sounds like.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
it was.
I didn't know how comfortable you felt calling them out, but I
Oh,
mean,
no. I mean, look,
So is it?
it was a shit show.
how embarrassing is that? And then, you know, civil lawyers are always talking a bunch of junk on criminal lawyers.
No. Look, I'll be the last to do that. I really would be. But I can tell you, I've never seen anything like it. This was mismanaged from the minute from its inception. It was a political prosecution. They prosecuted innocent people. They did it shamelessly. It should have, the ripcord should have been pulled on this thing months after it was indicted. I can't tell you how many times Rusty Hardin and members of the defense went to them and said, guys, what are you thinking? I mean, how on God's green earth do you reconcile these facts? And they ignored it and just kept pressing forward. It was a shameless attempt, day by day, week by week, month by month, to try to rescue a dead dog. It was dead on arrival.
You know, was this a Alex Forrest kind of deal, or was it a Kim Ogg kind of thing? What do you?
You know, I don't know, and I will say this: I'm certain that the upper management of the DA's office was attuned to what was happening. I don't know to what degree they were really aware of the quantity of proof that the defense had, or how much they truly paid attention to it. I think that they just assumed it was going to play its course out. It played out, in my opinion, in embarrassing fashion, and it was in the end, it was an embarrassment.
I heard a rumor that this was the first time Judge Hill had ever directed the state out. Do you know if that rumor is true?
I don't know.
Because I heard something.
Which Judge Hill are we talking about? Because there are two.
Oh no, this is Belinda Hill.
Josh Hill and retired
Judge Hill, like the scary one.
You said that, Kate. But I just wanted to make that clear.
Petrifies
We're talking about Josh Hill in the 232nd. We're talking about retired judge, former first assistant district attorney, Belinda Hill.
Yeah, no, look, yeah. I mean, Belinda, I heard that rumor too. I don't know the accuracy of that. I can tell you, I wouldn't be surprised. But I know that she struggled mightily with directing this out. But it was inescapable. Look, we went through, this was so bad that after how many months? From 7 months of an ongoing trial, they argued that they had to argue that they had constructively identified the defendants, because not one of their witnesses actually identified the defendants. None of them.
Can you explain what a directed verdict is to those who are watching and don't know, and what the judge found?
It means that at the close of the state's case, the state failed to present a prima facie or just basic foundational case enough that it warrants going to the jury. You just didn't meet your elements. They
got to offer one.
Right.
Isn't it like a scintilla of evidence? Like a scintilla of evidence on the element.
Right. You have to identify. And here's where Belinda was willing to give them a bit of a nod on the idea that they were constructively identified. Because as you might imagine, in the trial, you might wave your hand to the side and say, were any of these guys in the room or something like that? Okay. So there the state was running around trying to dig through the records of a 6-month long trial, trying to find indications in the record of reference. And they're standing up in front of the judge after all this, having to argue that they constructively identified the defendants, right? And I will tell you that as to the CEO of the company, they didn't even come that close. They never identified him.
So you're talking about when they say, and do you see the person that, broke into your house sitting in the courtroom today? And they go, yeah, it's that guy over there in the white shirt and red tie with the funny mask on his face. They didn't even do that.
No, didn't even do that.
That's what you learn when you lose your first trial.
Right.
Well, I will say, like, as a misdemeanor prosecutor, as like a baby 3, I would write it out on a list, my elements, and like check them off, right? Harris County. And I actually, as a defense attorney, especially in misdemeanor cases, I still do that because baby 3s can mess things up very quickly. The fact that it happened in such a big case with what you would think, on the defense side, you have these amazing lawyers. I mean, that's just incompetence on the other side. I mean, that is 101 prosecution.
Well, and to be clear, I'm not entirely sure that that's why Belinda granted the directed verdict. It was one potential basis. The real problem that the government had was that one of the key elements in their indictment was that Leslie Commerdale and Rich Rowe had participated in a decision to store the chemicals on site. And they didn't prove it. Leslie Commerdale is the plant manager. He does not have the authority to make that decision. And Rich Rowe didn't even join the management team at the time until after the decision was already made. So the reality is that the 2 guys in the room didn't participate in the decision that you charged and you just prosecuted for the last 7 months. What the hell are we doing here? Now you might ask yourself, well, why the hell didn't the government know that? Well, the answer, and I can say this without any doubt, I represented about 28 to 30 Arkema employees. I represented all of the employees at Arkema who were on the ride-out crew. I represented several of the employees up at King of Prussia on their management team. And I can tell you exactly how many people any investigator or any prosecutor interviewed. That'd be 0.
That's incredible.
They never talked to anyone.
Did the state of Texas go
what
after?
Did they have? I mean, what did they have? So
what
far, what evidence did they
present?
Well, here's the thing. They argued a theory. They didn't argue any facts. As I described it to someone at the close of this, I said, Jesus, this has been a trial by deposition. They're just putting people up on the stand and ask. They don't know what the hell they're going to say. And it was a trial by deposition, and it was an attempt to convict based on supposition. They were just going to ask for assumptions.
Constructive guilt.
Yeah, it was literally like there's a shooting at a nightclub. Let's keep putting people on the witness stand till we figure out who did it.
Wow,
that's incredible. Was there any conversations with the prosecutors after the trial? Did y'all?
No, I don't think we're going to be getting any Christmas cards.
Well, I'm just wondering that because these people have to go back to whatever firms that they were from, and like they didn't even get to the jury. Like
no.
They didn't even get to the defense case.
No, like
after the judge granted a directed verdict, of course, the defense left the room. Right? I mean, that's right. Rule number 1: get out. But we left the room and we were outside the hallway, and oddly, the state just stayed at the counsel table. And I think I don't know. I truly don't know. But I think part of it was I don't think they realized that when the judge directed out the two people, that it collaterally stopped them from going forward against the company.
And they were like, I'm waiting to call my next witness.
Yeah, I think they were kind of waiting to figure out, why did she direct out the company? I don't know that, but that's my suspicion.
That's
So
incredible.
without the COVID break, how long would the trial been without the COVID break?
I'd say for about 6 weeks of testimony. Now, and that
6 weeks.
that was for the state's case. You know, we of course we debated on what kind of defensive cases we would put on. We had the capacity to put people on. We had tons of experts. We had quite a few people, both on the police side of the allegations and on the plant side of the allegations that we could call. But as this case was progressing, we were slowly eliminating those potential witnesses because we just kept on thinking, you know, they didn't prove this, they didn't prove this. At the end of the day, I think if push came to shove, it was probably going to happen that we didn't call anybody.
What was your strategy?
Well, the jury told you they was going to take them less than 2 hours to find them not guilty. So
right.
Incredible. What was your strategy as far as the defense look? So a lot of there was some hype or some conversation about that y'all dressed down the CEOs. I don't know if you caught wind of that, but us over here looking at it, there was some conversation about you told some of the CEOs or some of the accused to not wear a tie and just to do a coat and a jacket. And did that come into play at all, or was that just like people talking about speculating as to how y'all wanted to look as a team?
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. You know, I wasn't party to any of those discussions. I will tell you that, in my opinion, there wasn't a whole lot of effort put into that. First of all, the plant manager, I'm not kidding when I say this guy was the salt of the earth, the nicest possible guy you could possibly imagine. The employees that worked around him, they told me, they told everybody they'd run through walls for this guy. He's the type of guy they love to work around, but he is a Louisiana born, hardworking guy. You know, he's got no pretentiousness whatsoever about him. He's just an incredibly competent guy. The fellow that Dan Cogdale was representing, when he talked about how it felt to be acquitted, when his case was dismissed in the middle of trial, you know, people finally got a sense of what he was like. He's the nicest human on earth. I mean, he brought tears to everybody's eyes at that press interview. The CEO, one of the things you have to realize about these companies, this Arkema, I didn't realize this, but you know, the chemical company is not considered the glitz and glamour industry that maybe the oil and gas world is.
Sure.
It's kind of a dirt under the nails area. He's the head of a multinational, international chemical company with headquarters in France, and he's up there in Pennsylvania. But he's remarkably down to earth, and it wasn't hard to portray that. They acted kind of like they were international chemical company with
That's me. Sorry, that's me. Sorry.
And the you know, the lawyers were the lawyers, right? I mean, Rusty wore Rusty's colors, you know, the orange tie now and then, or the pale suit. Dan was Dan, and nobody pulled any punches. You know, Tim Johnson, he was kind of the adult in the room, right? And Paul Nugent, I mean, I love Paul. He just, you know, he kills you with his kind of carefree attitude. And you know, they all were themselves. So no, I don't think that there was a whole lot of strategy put into trying to project an image, but there didn't need to be.
So I don't want to take away from that. I would like to see if we can have some of those people you just mentioned come on the show and do another full hour when we're not, you know, on the verge of a major election and Halloween and a bunch of other stuff. But what kind of I'm really curious to hear that the judge let you kind of reopen the cases and do a summary, because the Code of Criminal Procedure is the black and white on how you conduct a trial, and it doesn't really allow for anything like that. Was there any like discussion before it started back up with the judge and the jurors? Like, everybody feeling okay? Was there did the judge convey a contingency plan if any of the jurors got sick?
Well, we had a couple alternates. As I recall, we lost one alternate in trial. I don't recall the reason why we did. It wasn't COVID related. The judge touched bases with the jury about once a month or so. But beyond that, there wasn't much. This was a textbook example of you can get away with whatever you want as long as nobody objects.
Sure. Yeah.
I think the state probably thought that it was favorable to them to represent some of the testimony. We knew it was going to be favorable to us. Some of the testimony that had been adduced was an absolute human train wreck. So we were anxious to highlight it.
Well, and there's so much more to talk about on this, and I'm not trying to use that to segue into something else, but I do want to kind of talk a little bit about, yeah, Kate, sorry.
I just wanted to mention really quickly, because I know there is rumored backstory on why Kim Og made the decision to indict and why the civil attorneys. And just for anybody watching, you can always go to Murray Newman's blog, Life of the Harris County Criminal Justice Center. He wrote up a great blog kind of going through some of the maybe conflict on the prosecutor side that may be interest to our viewers.
What, do you want to share any of those? I didn't read that blog post.
Well, I don't remember what was the civil attorney that came in. Mike was his name, right?
Yeah. Mike Doyle.
He's also representing the family from the raid gone bad. The Gomez raid.
Yeah,
the Harding Street raid. He's representing the family, which Og is prosecuting those officers. Then he comes in, and according to what I've read, he actually took this case pro bono. So that seems. And then the day she announced, I believe, the indictments against Arkema, she went to a fundraiser hosted by the civil attorneys who were representing the plaintiffs against Arkema on the civil suit.
And in addition, during the trial, it came out that the prosecutors were in contact with the civil lawyers on the case.
I figured as much.
Yeah. So what kind of things did you...
Hold on. We got Rob Fickman on the show. Rob, how you doing? Welcome to the Halloween edition.
What's your costume? Angry old man?
Great outcome. Great trial. All good lawyers.
Absolutely.
All good lawyers.
So what kind of concerns do you have coming as the first trial that picked up during COVID? What kind of concerns do you have for people conducting trials? And JV, you too, you've done 4 trials so far?
Yeah, we got to talk about JV.
We'll get there. Right now we're talking Arkham. I mean,
okay, we can stick with that. NRG. We're kind of freewheeling tonight. We can stick with that. I want to kind of know what we do in this new age. And, we got a survey from Marilyn Burgess that all but says we're not getting a fair cross-section of Harris County voter or citizens for jury duty. So, but yeah, we can keep talking about Arkema. There's plenty there to talk about. We can do days on that show or on that trial.
Well, I was liking the Arkema discussion. Rob, comments on Arkema.
Well, Arkema is not my case. That's Chris's deal. I'm just, I would say that, that's a terrific team of lawyers. And when you go to trial on a white collar case with all great lawyers, it doesn't hurt. It helps. The first federal trial I ever had on the defense as a defense lawyer was against Tim Johnson. And I had a letter carrier accused of stealing mail, and can't tell you how many years ago that was, but I still remind him of the outcome.
Chris, was there any point in time that so I get nervous as hell, and nervous, and it pumps me up in the sense of the more kind of nervous I get, the more I'm going after and attacking. And it doesn't change the fact that sometimes I'm like, oh, that's not going to help us, or oh, I'm scared, like we might actually lose this, even though uh, I know that the facts don't support their position. Was there at any point in time, or what do you feel was one of the more challenging issues that you felt you had to overcome? I mean, was it anything in the facts? Do you think it was a jury pool? Was it the prosecutors? Was it the process? What at any point in time did you, as a defense team, say, "Look, this is a real problem, and we're scared on this, or this could hurt us at all"?
Yeah, I'm not saying this. I'm not trying to be coy. Um, no, there really wasn't. This was a case that, yeah, I guess in the beginning, there was a sense like we must be missing something. Why?
Sure.
Why? There must be a reason why they're prosecuting this that we're not seeing, or there's some spin. But when you put everybody together, and folks like when you drill down in the details, Heather Peterson, and Jenny Bravorka, they were so into the details of this case. They had touched every piece of paper, talked to every witness, and they would keep coming back and go, guys, there's nothing here. I don't know why the hell they're prosecuting this. And then when you see the indictments, we got 4 indictments quashed in a row. It starts to dawn on you that, like, this is just a shit show. I mean, they don't know what they're doing. And honestly, I mean, I was in charge of writing the jury instructions with Derek Hollingsworth, and the jury instructions. So it took months to try to craft the jury instructions for the case that everybody associates with Arkema. But the second one, which was what we were referring to as the assault by words case, where Dan Cogdale's client was accused of assaulting a police officer by making a misrepresentation to a third person. Okay, that supposedly led to the assault of the police officer because the police officer was exposed to a vapor, despite the fact, mind you, that Dan Cogdale's client was 3,000 miles away at the time that the alleged misrepresentation was made, didn't even ever see the cop.
They charged him with
He
that?
wasn't even seen.
Dan's client was in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, when the alleged misrepresentation was made to a fire chief, who supposedly then conveyed instructions to a cop who drove through the cloud and allegedly got injured. So when you read the indictment that they charged them with, Derek and I were working on that indictment day and night, and I was about to tell the judge, Judge, you can't write a jury charge for this. I mean, we tried to get it quashed, and she
There's
let
no
it go
application
forward.
of law.
You could not write a jury charge for this indictment without adding in facts for the state that weren't alleged and weren't proven. It was horrible. Now, as a practical matter, it didn't come to pass because Dan's client was, of course, dismissed after we came back from COVID and after it was disclosed that the prosecutors themselves had questions about whether or not Dan's client was guilty. That there had been discussions on the state side to dismiss Dan's client, and that came out in the middle of a prosecutorial misconduct hearing when Dan Cogdale asked the prosecutor, has anyone on the state side ever discussed dismissing against Mike Keogh? And there was
yeah.
this pause that lasted for about 2 minutes.
So let's talk about that. I remember I had forgotten about that there was a big headline the next day that prosecutors are withholding information or not being candid to the defense and or the court. What was that? What can you expound on that for a moment?
Yeah, there were 2 prosecutorial misconduct hearings in this trial. There were actually 3 allegations of prosecutorial misconduct, but only 2 that went to a hearing. The first allegation was sustained. The judge made a finding of record of prosecutorial misconduct for their failure to turn over certain evidence. The second was a huge issue involving disclosing, in my opinion, blatantly exculpatory information and failing to disclose it. And during that hearing, Alex Forrest was on the stand. He was being grilled about how he had presented the case to the grand jury. I will be generous and say that he acknowledged that he misunderstood and misrepresented facts to the grand jury. But at the end of that, Dan Cogdale asked him, well, in light of all this, has anybody discussed dismissing the case against Mike Keogh? And, we all expected a snap answer of no. And instead, we got literally like a 2-minute silence, followed by an answer that was, there have been some discussions. And at that point, there was this giant timeout. The judge had a powwow with the parties, and then the state dismissed against Mike Keogh without telling anyone on the defense. They filed the dismissal at about 3:00 on Friday, and we found out about it when we checked the site the next day. They didn't call and tell him that he dismissed against his client. It was a chicken shit maneuver.
Childish.
I knew Alex before he was ever a prosecutor, and personally I like the guy. But when he became the head of environmental crimes with Kim Ogg, I said, "What?"
I scratched my head too.
What? Like, wait, the guy? I mean, look, fine, age doesn't matter, but the guy's like, when he got the position, I don't know, it was my age, and I'm not that old, and it's. I always wondered how in the world he got to be the head of environmental crimes. I don't recall him having that much experience on beforehand. Look, good guy, like him. Yeah, who said that?
I don't think it's the personality so much of Alex or anything like that. I think historically the district attorney's office has really not gone after environmental crimes.
Exactly.
It's been a sideshow that occasionally they would, somebody dumped some oil at a car lot, they'd go after somebody like that. That was the extent of what this district attorney's office did, primarily because they didn't have the manpower or the money to investigate those kind of cases. So I think they were kind of out of their league. They certainly were out of their league when it came to lawyering. And in terms of the facts, it sounds like they were. It sounds like they bit off a lot more than they could chew. And
well, I was going to say,
the defendants had good lawyers.
Well, I was going to say, it doesn't, not only did y'all have the facts on your side, but from the sounds of it, y'all prepared like you should for a trial. You investigated, you read every document, you guys were ready to go. And the other side just didn't prepare. And I think it goes back to what Rob's saying. There's a reason the feds usually handle these big environmental crimes because they have a whole team that comes down. I mean, they were just...
Bates labeled their evidence. I mean, I haven't heard Bates labeling since I was an intern at Fulbright and Jaworski like 15 years ago.
Well,
the feds would so far away from criminal.
Well,
the feds would have investigated this case. They would have seen that there was not a case there, and nobody would have been indicted.
No,
Exactly.
The feds never would have touched this case. Not a chance.
Yeah.
The DA's office. I understand. Look, I worked there when we had a fantastic, I think, structure, and this is just not a case that the state is hardwired to try. It requires a much more nuanced approach and a much more detailed investigation. There wasn't even an investigator assigned to this case. Alex Forrest did the entire accumulation of documents, presentation to grand jury without an investigator. Now, personally, I think he's crazy to do that. I think that the case law is clear that you can expose yourself to civil liability when you as a prosecutor act as an investigator, which is exactly what he did. I think he's crazy to have bitten off what he did, but candidly, I don't think he had the experience to know how deep the water was that he was in. But when you, as a county DA, decide to indict an international chemical company for a complicated, untested theory of prosecution, that speaks to the competency of your office.
That's incredible. Speaking of incompetent, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to say that. How about judges revoking bonds without hearings? How about that? Uh, what else?
Talking confidence.
I didn't say that. Well, let's talk about anything else about the Arkema. Chris, that's incredible. The entire journey was amazing.
No, I mean, I will tell you that it was every single day of that trial, there was another revelation. At the end of the trial, there were two distinct findings of prosecutorial misconduct. We're still waiting on the judge to issue her findings of fact on the second one. I think there'll be grievances that come out of it. I think that there will be, they're just constant stories. I can tell you that I think the defense lawyers, I say this not just because I was part of it, but I had the benefit of being an observer of it. I think they tried to play this thing fair. I think they didn't sandbag in any way. They tried to kill it multiple times before trial, but at the end of the day, it was never going to die. They were going to push this sucker through. They'd rather lose it than dismiss it.
What a waste of taxpayer dollars.
Horrible.
I mean, can you imagine that going on now? I mean, Neil, you had your name was or Borat. I'm not sure which one you're going as, but
I'm a Borat.
You had misdemeanor trials greater than felony trials? Question mark. Judges are taking the limited jury panels that we've got, and they're using them for bonded defendants. On DWI cases, when you've got people sitting in jail right now, facing 25 to life, waiting to know what's going to happen to their fate. I mean, judges revoking bonds left and right without a hearing, and then stacking the jail deeper, and all amidst the pandemic. And to imagine that what they would have done with this trial if it had started a month later and gotten pushed back even further because of the pandemic, it's
not very clear. I don't know, Mr. Downey, great job. Mr. Harris, Mr. JV, you the greatest TV show in Kazakhstan. I like you, Mr. Fickman. Very great job, lady, whatever. Yes, I want to know why there are so many panels for the misdemeanors, but all these people are waiting for their 10 to 20, 25 to life. Why no panel? It does not make sense to me. I do not understand the why that these people are waiting for maybe 30 days in jail. Oh, let's get the jury. And that people are waiting 20 years plus. We cannot get the jury for them. Why not? Please.
I'll tell you this much. I objected. I've had two. Both of my clients were in custody. I objected everywhere. Continuances everywhere. Continuance 1, continuance 2. Motions denied. Bills.
But why?
I need to make a bill. I need to incorporate by reference my last 4 bills, and then I'm adding this new thing. I'm sitting there like, hey, on the flip, Neil, like, there's got to be other people. I'm concerned about the makeup, the cross section. I'm concerned about if we're gonna have a 25 to life or 15 to life case. We don't need any nonsense about anything that's going to even have the appearance of impropriety or a process that's flawed.
When we shouldn't be having trials
at all.
To have trials.
Prosecute the misdemeanors. It's very important to prosecute the misdemeanors.
Especially misdemeanors. We've had over 200,000 people die in this country from COVID. It is spiking again. You know how many Americans died in World War II? I looked it up. 419,000. Half as many people have already died this year as died in World War II. Half as many Americans. Yet these judges are still going forward with trials and energy, and that's wrong. It's wrong, especially on the misdemeanors. What misdemeanor trial where a guy's on bond needs to be taken to trial now? This is me, Rob, right? I'm angry. That's the way, you invite me on the show. I'm pissed. It shouldn't happen. Judges are wrong to have misdemeanor trials, and frankly, they're wrong to have felony trials. Maybe it was right, obviously, to finish that one trial that was already started, but to have any trial and to tell us to tell us that this bull that somehow NRG is a safe place is ridiculous and absurd. It's not safe. You're not going to.
He's not happy. He's not the happy man.
The only thing I will say, I agree with you, Rob. I do agree that there needs to be a process in place to hold a trial if there is an in custody client who is demanding to go to trial. That despite his,
I agree with that.
attorney, you know, we have to have that mechanism to allow that in custody client to have their trial. But why are judges forcing clients to say, no, I don't want my trial right now? That shouldn't be happening.
I agree with you.
Why is it a misdemeanor case over felony? It does not make a sense to me. I do not know.
I agree. I'm sure that there, like, I'm sure go try a something else when there's no reason for when the defendant is saying no for us to go. There isn't.
No, in other parts of the state,
Rob, you got a whole Wolverine thing going. It looks good.
and more judges have gotten sick in other parts of the state. And as soon as the judges start getting sick, they stop the trials. And once these judges here start getting COVID and get truly sick, then this stuff is going to stop. Beyond that, they got a problem in February, the rodeo. Anyway,
Yeah, well, it's all the name of the rodeo.
Well, that's the thing.
Goes from the circus to the rodeo.
Well, they lose their. From what I understand, they lose their contract upcoming on that's coming to the rodeo, and so what? They spent all of this money and all of these things for what? Maybe they're going to have 10 criminal trials at the end of the day for it, or something like that. Like that's ridiculous. Like they spent millions of dollars.
All the money.
They need to stop focusing on the defense side and trials and start looking at the DA's intake, which accepts every
Every
single
piece of
charge.
crap.
Oh my God,
So
yes.
often at the numbers.
They
That's
don't.
the problem.
You're right, Kate.
Very great point.
With
From that gypsy.
We're JV.
yeah, we got to take this out. How about Kate? Why don't you tell everybody who's watching and for Justin, Rob, Borat, and Chris? Why don't you tell us goodbye? Send us out.
Bye.
Very nice. Have a good Halloween. Be great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the greatest show in Kazakhstan. We watch it all the time. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Can I leave now?
Mark, thank you for coming. Chris, you're the best. Rob, it's always a pleasure. Hey, thank you, Borat, Justin. You're the best.
How do I leave?
Thanks, all of you.
Happy
Halloween.
I'll leave this.
Happy Halloween.
Everybody go vote. Go vote. Are we off the air, Mark?
Voted. Good to see you, Mark. See y'all.
Rob, thank you.
Bye, Rob.
Take me long to get angry. That's me.